And hello, everybody, and welcome to another large-scale consolidated live show here with Andrew, MrPictovid.
Last I checked, I was here.
Are you sure?
Some days I'm not sure. I got to double check each morning.
There you go. So, anyway, we have a full scheduled show tonight, very busy one. So, we're going to go ahead and skip the intro of everybody. We know that you're here and saying hello to everybody in the chat. And but we have a lot to go through tonight. But before we bring up our next guest, we do have a word from our sponsor.
That we do. As soon as I find it. There it is.
The following episode of Large Scale Consolidated Live is brought to you by Splitjaw, makers of quality metal products for the G-scale modeling world. For rail clamps, expansion joints, bridges, and more, Splitjaw Products has you covered. For more information, check out their website at www.railclamp.com.
All right.
And we're back. So let's welcome our new guest.
Our new guest.
Or
We have a
next
new one?
guest. Next guest. Should say
All
next.
right.
Yeah. Correct.
And he is Charlie Zimmerman.
And welcome back.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Charlie.
Hello.
Sporting the shirt just for you guys. So
I like it.
Looks good.
where I can fit right in.
There you go.
We're like a
So-
couple of square pegs and round holes around here, you know?
Yeah. So what do you have in store for us, Charlie?
Well, today we're going to be talking about decals. We're going to look at how to design them, how to print them, how to apply them, how to remove them, everything related to decals, and use of fonts versus pictures, just a whole lot of stuff with decals.
Sweet.
Sounds great. And so how we getting started here?
Well, couple concepts to talk about here. I'm going to be printing decals using an Alps printer, and this printer is capable of printing white. And I realize a lot of you at home don't have that capability, but you can buy decal printer paper, like from Testers, that is just all white. And then that presents difficulties of how do you cut it out? What do you do? I'm printing everything onto clear paper because I can print white, but I'll show you what it looks like if you were to print it without the white. I have some samples with that, some examples, so we'll talk about that stuff. May you never print your own decals, that's fine too, but I think it helps everybody to know what goes into the design process so that you can take an image that's scalable down and scalable big. So we're going to look at what is a vector versus a pixel in photography versus digital imagery. And I think that helps a lot of people to know how to design stuff. Or if you're hiring somebody for a couple bucks an hour, or maybe you're out on Fiverr to design your decals, or whoever's printing your decals for you, you're paying them to do design work. Perhaps you can do some of your own, or at least have better insight into what their job entails. And maybe you want to try printing your own decals, then great. If you just want to use a laser printer, like I said, there's the Testers brand stuff. But what do you do with it once you print it? How do you seal it? How do you apply it? What all are we going to do? So to get started, we need a kind of a little bit of a chemistry thing, I think, just to know what we're talking about. Like what is this decal paper stuff? And this is what we're working towards printing on tonight's episode. It's a very smooth piece of paper. It's super shiny. And there's some disagreement on the internet chemically what's going on that makes a decal. And some people say that it's dextrose. Some people say that it's glucose. And really, they're both the same thing. So I think there's a little bit of opinion, shall we say, out there on what you see on Wikipedia and in some blogs. But it seems to be some sort of like a dextrose type thing mixed with lacquer. And we print our decal onto that, and then we seal it somehow, like with another lacquer. We cut it out, we get it wet. We'll talk about what kind of water to use. We stick it on our model, and then we try and seal it and paint it and all that stuff. So for doing the design work, Andrew, do you want to pull up that first picture?
Sure thing.
What all do we have?
There we go.
So I highly recommend getting highly detailed pictures, especially if you can take your own, of the prototype you want to model, because there can be differences. It might not be standard. You take a look at this picture of a Norfolk Southern engine that I photographed at Enola Train Yard, and you think, okay, it's 8303. But if you zoom in on those number boards, you'll notice that one is more bold than the other. They're not an exact match.
Oh, yeah.
So it's these little things that make trains unique. And that's the type of stuff that I like to model. You could print 8303 with a Norfolk Southern font, and I'm sure nobody would mind. But I like to find these little unique things about the train and model that specifically, because sometimes they put it on crooked. I like to model it crooked then. So I research all that type of stuff. And in fact, another thing I noticed with this picture, if you zoom out or scroll down, it actually has 2 different ditch lights.
Oh, yeah.
So again, it's another thing for the modeler to know, hey, if you wanted to model 8303, it's not your standard off-the-shelf thing. So if you're into detailing it, you got to go research pictures. And I feel the same then about the decals. So 8303, you can get a Norfolk Southern font. You can buy one off the internet, I think. There might be a free one. I'm not sure. You could type it up. You can print it. You can stick it on your model, and I'm sure it's fine. But I like to go to the next level. And if it's different in some way, I treat it like it's a picture. So even though it's numbers, I treat it like it's a picture, and I scale it and print it as if it were a drawing, even though it's actually numbers. So do you have that second picture of another Norfolk Southern engine?
That I do.
So here's 6635. Here, the difference on the number boards is a lot more pronounced. I'm told that the font on the left is the Conrail style, and the font on the right is the Southern Railway style.
Interesting.
So you mix them together on a Norfolk Southern engine, and away you go. So that's what I get into. So if somebody approaches me about, hey, can you help me make some decals? I'm like, okay, well, do you have pictures? Because you can tell me you just want 6635, and if you're happy with that, I'll help you find a font, and life goes on. But this show, we're going to get into more like, how do we work with these differences and develop decals to honor them. So I mentioned that we're going to do a Union Pacific logo, and again, working with my photography. Andrew, if you got that next shot.
Let's see here. Sure I got the right one. Nope. I think I got it out of order.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, this is a good topic too. I model the Darjeeling Himalayan Railway, and this is a photo that my friend Paul, who lives in India, took. He took several photos of some of the freight wagons for the Darjeeling Railway. And if you look at these, you'll notice these are hand-cut stencils. So I'm never going to find a font that matches what some guy in India did in 1950 whatever when he painted this rail car. So it's not like it's a hand-done drawing per se. It is obviously a cutout stencil, like the 44 there on the weight, the lightweight next to the L. That's clearly the same number again, but boy, does that 6 look weird there on the 76. And where are you ever going to find Indian writing, Hindi writing that is also a stencil as a font? So there's no way that I could ever easily reproduce this. So I treated each one of these like it was the Union Pacific logo and designed the decals for it. So I think you've got some sample photos, or if you want to show more of the prototype. Okay, so there's the model. So if you want to zoom in on some of the writing on that.
Trying to zoom in. Oh,
hey. Whoa. Oh, hey. So you notice like even the F there has some irregularity to it.
All right. I don't know why it's jumping so far.
Yeah. But you can see all the fine lettering and everything matches that photo. That's because I treated all that writing just as if it was the Union Pacific Shield logo.
Wow, you copied that pretty exact.
Well, that's what I go for, is I try to work from the picture, and then the picture's pixels. And if you've ever taken something and blown it up, you'll see that you've got all these little dots, and they might not make a perfectly straight line or a perfectly smooth curve. So what I do, as we'll see in the next upcoming videos, is I take that image and I run it through Photoshop, straighten it up a little bit, put it into Adobe Illustrator, which works with vectors. So no longer do you have a series of pixels that make a line of the star, that and shrink that. I could shrink those decals down to Z scale, or we can blow somewhere. But because they don't have pixels, you don't get that pixelated effect where everything kind of gets fuzzy or things get cut off. So that's why it's important to do all your design work with vectors. And I use Adobe Illustrator. I'm not saying you have to. I think CorelDRAW can do that. I don't know if GIMP can, but there's lots of open source products out there that you're more than welcome to play around with. I'm not trying to teach anything that's product specific here. I just want to teach the concept that if you can turn it into a vector, you can scale it very easily. So this photo I took in Alabama. I was near a train station there, and I caught a freight going by. So I took this pan shot. So that's how you see the blur. I'm actually moving the camera as the train goes by. And I thought this would be a good image to work with to make some sample decals. So what I needed to do, though, is, if you'll notice, I'm not exactly side on to the train. I'm kind of looking at it like you can still see the roof of the train. So what I do is I have an image correcting program from DxO called Viewpoint. And there's lots of other tools out there that do the similar thing, where I define what is horizontal and what is vertical. And then it will sort of squish the image in certain directions. It'll manipulate it in order to force those hard lines that we need. That way I end up with a logo that's not sort of squished or sort of off kilter. So I think the first video that you have there is of us working with the image. So this is that Viewpoint program. What you do in this video is sped up a little bit. I draw a box around it, but I'm trying to match the exact lines of the locomotive so that when I apply the changes, boom, there it knows exactly. So the number looked a little squished, but we don't care about the road number. We were going for the Union Pacific logo. So I think you're playing it again.
Yeah, I was trying to drag it through there. We could get a close up there what you were doing.
See what happens with the lines. And then I think you have the output file then to show next.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oop. Give me 1 second here.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was just debating here if we had the same video in two places here or not. We were looking for the picture next, right, Charlie?
Yep. I think you want to bring up the picture because that'll show that there's the black line sort of around the top. It just shows what the program did to squish it in. My picture, okay. So to fix this little sample, I've got another sample that we'll watch. It's like loading on dial-up here.
Wow.
That's going slow.
Yeah, it's only a 24 meg file. That's kind of crazy.
But as it loaded, you guys were able to see that the edges were squished in at the top and it sort of pulled down on the right-hand side. And that's just to correct the aspect ratio.
Okay.
All right. So this one wasn't all that interesting because it didn't get squished all that much. So I figured let's show you guys something else. So I think, Andrew, you have a picture of a boxcar.
That I do.
TPX rail box. So I shot this picture in Enola Yard. And again, I'm pretty much straight on, but you'll notice the down a little bit. And that's just, the diverging lines of the view angle that we have. If you're really into photography, there's a way that you can optically fix this with a shift lens. You can actually shift the lens physically on the camera, and you can correct for some of this distortion. But let's run it through that same program where I'll draw the lines.
Okay.
So I can give a video of that. Nope, there's the program. So all I have to do here is define what is perfectly horizontal and what should be vertical. So I just put these blue lines at corresponding spots. So this would be a great way if I needed to lift the Railbox logo, you know, the interleaved lines, or I wanted the T-box. Like maybe I can't find that exact font somewhere, so I wanted to lift T-box right off of there. This way I can make sure that the T is perfectly straight and not a little squished in because it was towards the end of the car. So here you can see I'm zooming out, zooming in, putting those lines. So I'm hoping that the car builder, and this is a brand new car, that's why I was taking pictures of it, because it was just built, I think this was built in November, and I photographed this on New Year's Eve. So this was like a 1 month old car going on 2 months old. So you hit apply and boom, there you can see now those edges of the car are perfectly straight up and down. So you should have the output file that hopefully will load a little quicker than the previous example.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it to load right now, and it's giving me some issue for some reason.
Okay.
So
The whole concept here is fixing converging lines. And although I took these pictures and I can actually use a shift lens and stuff, I still have to do these little corrections. These aren't gigantic corrections. But if you took a picture like a wedge shot or something where the locomotive is not perfectly side on or not perfectly straight, you need to do this type of action in order to correct everything so that you have the perfectly straight lines up and down as well as horizontal. So here loads the boxcar.
insert dialed up sounds here.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. I think we got the concept on that. So do you have a question, or do you want to move on to the video?
Nope. No, I don't have a question.
Okay, I think the next video is taking that output file of the Union Pacific locomotive, going into Photoshop, and then turning it into layers in Photoshop. Because what we need the color part, and we need the part that's going to be white separate. Because the way the printer works, if you give it a file, it doesn't know what is white and just what is unneeded background. So we have to define something for it to print as white. So when I go into the printer and say, okay, here's a little video where I crop the image, crop it in a little tighter. Then we'll start playing with some edge detection. And so what I need to do is I need to have that full shield as a black image, 100% black. Because when I tell the printer to print white, it's going to look at everything in black and white. And whatever is black, it's going to print white. So it's a little bit of backwards logic here. But I need to draw everything that I want to be white in black. And then I need everything else that I want in color as two separate files. And this is a little counterintuitive. It's not exactly how you think it would be, but once you wrap your head around this logic, it helps you with the design work. So as you can see, those edges were a little blurry. That's because it's a pixel. So I needed to clean up those edges a little bit. So Andrew, I think, do you have importing it into... Okay, there you go. There is a full black outline picture.
Okay.
And then I think you have the color part, which looks just like the logo, except, when we tell it to print, it doesn't know about printing white. When we print colors, we have to print white separately. So I designed it so instead of just printing the white stripes and printing the Union Pacific, I'm going to print the whole logo in white and then layer the colors on top. That way the colors appear more opaque when they're on the model train car. So, Andrew, I think you have a video file next of importing it into Illustrator.
That I do.
So I zoom all the way out when I play. The trick is to use the keyword place. When you place something in Illustrator, you can then tell Illustrator if this is like a 3-color image, a 16-color image, line art, whatever, and then it will sit there and churn. It'll smooth some stuff. It'll use your graphics card, and it will produce a vector image. So what we're looking at here is right out of Photoshop. I've got the layer that's color on top of the layer that is black. So there you can see I'm turning layers on and off so you can see through them. And then when you convert them over, when you do the little ray tracing type thing, you turn them into a vector, which I think is what it's probably churning on there, even though it's sped up. The Union Pacific logo ends up turning into a full white look there. But behind it is still the black. So there you can see I'm turning the layers on and off. And I have those two images perfectly on top of each other. So when I scale them to fit the model, I have to scale both of them at the same time. And you don't want to accidentally make it taller than it is wide and stuff. You don't want to screw with that stuff. So my tip to you guys when you're editing images like this, if you hold down the Shift key when you resize stuff, it will keep the original proportions of height and width.
Okay.
So are we making sense here where we kind of need to break it down into different layers? So Andrew, I gave you the full output file from Adobe Illustrator. And the cool part about the output file from Illustrator is you can open it in any PDF reader. You don't have to have Illustrator. So let's say I was making this car design for Andrew. I can email him that file, which he's working on opening right now, and he can print that locally, and he can hold that piece of paper up to his train car and go, yeah, this is the right size, or no, this needs to be bigger. So it makes the collaboration with friends a lot easier to do. So here you can see I have a file that is a whole bunch of the black shields. And this is what we're going to use. You're going to see this file open up later when we go to print. And this is what I'm going to print as pure white. And then there's another file that just has the color stuff. And I had to make sure that those line up perfectly, because if they're off by a little bit, when they print, they're going to be off by a little bit. So the trick I do is I put them all into one file, and then I turn off one set of layers, save the file, turn those on, turn off the other set, save the file. That way I have the color and then the pure black version. So those are the two files that we're going to use to go ahead and print. So I talked a little bit about sizing. So one of the things we're going to do tonight, I'm going to switch over to close-up cam work.
Sure thing.
I happen to have, here, shoot it over here. I have these 3 aristo-craft Conrail gondolas.
Can I have one?
No. And they're all the same road number. I don't know if you can see that there, but they all end in, they're all 4113 on all the cars. And I can't have that.
Okay.
So we're going to renumber one of these. And what I start off doing is I'll measure to get an idea of the size that I'm going to need to print. So it's shorter than a centimeter tall. And I can also look at the width, like, it's slightly smaller than a centimeter. So I can actually go into Illustrator and you can define length and width in normal measurements. You can do it in metric, or you can do it in English measurement stuff. You don't have to have fancy crime scene rulers. You can just use your regular metal ruler. I put that stuff into Illustrator, and I was able to print out a set of 4s. So I printed this on regular paper, so I'm not wasting decal ink. I'm not wasting decal paper. So let's see if this first guess kind of looks about right. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it looks pretty close.
I think it looks a little big.
Okay.
Let me put the 4 next to the 4. Maybe I need to squish it here a little different. I don't know. You can cut this out. I just trying to save some time here. I think doesn't that seem a little tall? I don't know if you can get it in a little closer there.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was a little tall, so I printed out another version. Let's see if I can fold this a little better from the start. So I reprinted it just a little bit smaller, and I think that's a closer match to the right size.
Okay.
So what I did to design this was I used the Conrail font you can get out there. It's called Consolidated or Consolidated Rail or something you guys have heard of before. And I used that to design this 4, and then I sized it. So when we print the decal sheet, I put it together with the UP logo just so we're not wasting paper. And I printed that out. So I think the next thing we're going to do, now that we know the size of the 4 and the UP, is I think you've got the video of actually printing the decal.
Ooh. No, not the close-up of me video.
No, definitely didn't need the close-up of me.
Video of printing.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Dr. Nick. I mean, Charlie.
You don't look so good.
Wow, I've heard that before. Oop. Anyway, I wanted to share with the video.
And those of you that think it's the wrong font, stop getting ahead of me.
They're trying to play along.
Yeah, they're doing the home game.
All right, let's see here. I think this is the right one. So this is on the, what type of printer did you say this was, Charlie?
This is an Alps. What is it? A 550 is the model. And one of the drawbacks of the Alps, not only are they hard to find and it's hard to get ink and all that stuff, they don't work on anything newer than Windows XP. So I keep a Windows XP machine around for the sole purpose of printing decals. So as you can see, I loaded in the black stuff that we're going to print as white. And then send it to the printer. For some reason, this printer always complains until I hit the one button on it.
Now, do you have to go any place special to buy decal paper, Charlie?
I get it all through Jeremy. I don't know who his hookup is. I've seen the stuff on Amazon.
So this actually does one color, feeds through, goes back out. It doesn't do them simultaneously then.
Well, I picked single color, and I picked, initially I picked to print white undercoat is one of the colors that you can pick. So I did a white undercoat. Now we're going back in with the same file. And here I'm going to pick single ink, and then I'm going to pick single color, and then in the lower left, white. So you can see there's a whole bunch of colors there. You can print silver, you can print gold. It has a whole different set of colors. But when it comes to color itself, it has CMYK, which stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, which in this case is black. So yes, it uses special ink. We're going to look at that here in a little bit. So I'm now printing solid white on top of the background white. And again, the paper stays in the printer because we want to have everything be perfectly aligned. So then I'll close this file.
So does it have some way that it stays keyed on the paper so it doesn't get out of sync? Or did I
Yeah,
miss
there's an
saying it?
overlay option you can pick when you go into print.
Okay.
So I'd have no qualms if you wanted to run this again, but maybe stop it here in the second run. So now we're doing the CMYK part. So the white part kind of comes out the bottom of the printer. First up is cyan. So this is blue. Traditional printing stuff is CMYK. Display on your screen is RGB. So there you can see the cyan that it put on.
Okay.
Now it's going to do magenta. And then it sucks it back up through. So there's the magenta.
Wow, those are looking crisp.
Thank you. And then I don't know, but apparently it detected some yellow in the drawing. I don't know its breakdown. I don't know what percentage, but the printer figured all that out.
No, the question was for me, but I'm not quite sure of that answer.
I don't know about modern printers that can print white that aren't $60,000 high-end things.
I'll take 2 if someone else is buying.
It's done. So it finished that. So I don't know if you wanted to run that again so you can see some of those options. People at home, you can replay the entire video from tonight and catch all my little secrets for the options that I'm picking in there. I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff that I've learned just from playing around with it. I picked the thick paper cardboard option. Here we're going into pick single ink, and we're doing the white undercoat. Hold on, I can't find white undercoat. I have to go back up. There it is, white undercoat. Then I hit OK. And I go over to a tab kind of on the right, and there you see overlay. That's what keeps the paper inside the printer to print again. So I picked the cardboard because then it doesn't do the photo finisher that it likes to do, which just adds an annoying extra layer to things. So a lot of the settings that I'm doing here are all trial and error. Let's try this setting and print it and stick it on a train car, and gee, this sucks. And as you saw, there are a ton of options for the Alps printer.
Yeah.
So you're watching it here. So there's that white undercoat. And I have samples here to show you of just white undercoat, of the white top coat, of the whole. So we can look at them in detail in front of us. So I don't know if you want to continue watching further or.
No, we can. I did have a close-up you stuck in here of the inside of the printer.
Yeah, why don't you bring that up? And then I have one of the cartridges here for close-up work that we'll look at.
Okay.
So bring up the picture of the inside of the printer, and that'll be a good lead-in then to what the cartridges are, because they are not what I thought they were going to be. So what you're seeing in there is a series of ink cassettes, and they really are like a reel-to-reel cassette.
Almost like typewriter ribbon.
It's very much like typewriter ribbon. Very, very much like that. And you always have to have one spot free, but you can fill it up with whatever other things you want. So like I said, gold, silver, you have to put in the CMY, and then black if you want to do CMYK printing. So I have the white undercoat and the white top coat. There's all sorts of extra stuff like the V photo finisher. There's metallic magenta. There's lots of extra stuff you can get into with crazy printing, but that's just kind of the traditional load. So if you switch over to the close-up camera, I have in front of me.
Let me get rid of that. There we go.
This is an actual cassette out of the printer. In fact, I kicked this one while I was printing some stuff for tonight's show. So if you look at it, it looks like a traditional 80s cassette. It's got two reel-to-reel things. I can stick my finger in there and pull the stuff back and forth. And this is the white undercoat. So it has the white, and then I think the print head is on this side. And I don't know if it uses heat to transfer. I'm not exactly sure, or if it's pressure-based. But I do know that as the whole head rolls across the paper, the whole cartridge You get in closer and see it pulls the paper across, or it pulls the ink thing across the paper as it goes. So you can actually see that's like half the Union Pacific thing. So it's very wasteful. It doesn't go, hey, I'm not printing here, let's not turn the ink. It goes along and just prints those. So there's like the middle of the UP logo. And you can see it scrolled along past. It's got a little scrunching because of the heat. Because like I said, I think it uses heat. But there's a lot of white in between there that's all wasted. So and then there's that little sliver edge of the UP logo. I don't know how far back we have to go till we hit some of those 4s. But there you go. There's pieces of a 4 going past. Hope you guys can see. There we go.
Oh, okay.
My cameraman here.
We need to insert that meme of the Bic pen, Charlie.
There's a 4 that's pretty well defined. So it can actually kind of go through the ink cartridge and see what you've printed. But you will see, like, look, there's a whole sea of white that it didn't use as it passed over something.
Wow.
More UP logo. So if I'm playing around with stuff, I may take one of these and rewind it by hand. If I'm just testing a concept of what happens if I print this color atop this color, below that color, or whatever, you can rewind these. But it's not like a liquid ink like you might be thinking of. It's a weird little cartridge. So to demo, I have here, this is what it prints when I do the white undercoat. So it's just a little hint of white. And then I do the white top coat. So you can see these here next to each other. And then on top of that, I printed the UP logos. So that was what you saw getting printed there. I didn't do a CMYK of each thing because I felt that would just be a little wasteful. But hopefully this gives you an idea kind of what the printer is doing.
I was going to pop something up real quick here, Charlie, just because I thought it was interesting. Animal 22 is saying that he gets white toner cartridges for his laser printer. You swap out the black for it.
There you go. So he would be doing the exact same thing with designing white for black. So whatever he wants to print white, he would have to design it as black so that the printer is using what it thinks of as the black ink cartridge and then printing that. So sounds like he's found a nice way to print white. I have heard, speaking of laser printers, I've not experienced this. I've just heard rumors on the internet that sometimes laser printers will melt just because of their heat that they can spray with the paper.
Yeah, the thermal.
Yeah, so something to watch out for. I can't recommend what printers to use or to stay away from. I don't know any of that stuff because I'm using the Alps. So after you print it, you have to seal it. And this gets back to my hypothesis about the chemistry where we've got that glucose layer and some sort of lacquer on top. Now we've gone and printed a whole bunch of colors. We've printed white, we've printed cyan, magenta, all that stuff. So we've printed all those things. Now we need to seal it. And turns out there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I'll show you first what I use and then talk about some other stuff. So Testers makes this can, and it's called Decal Bonder Spray. And this sprays just like any gloss white paint. I have no idea if it is in any chemical way different from Testers gloss spray. It costs like $1 extra a can. It smells just like gloss clear. It goes on just like gloss clear. But if they change the pH balance or something to make it better for decal bonding, I have no idea. Maybe I'm getting ripped off and spending $1 extra a can, but you guys know my theory. If I've got a $500 engine and I spent hours painting it, I spent an hour designing the decals for it, I'm going to spend the extra $1 and go with the name brand listed way to seal it. The thing you don't want to use to seal it would be, this is the dull coat.
Oh,
here it says dull coat. Because it just, now you've got dull decals and it's that much harder to apply them. So
you coat these before
you apply your decals just to bring the whole project together. Great tool then, but don't use it to seal your decals. Go ahead.
As I say, so you're talking sealing them before you even try to apply them then.
Yep, you spray the whole sheet of paper. I put it right in my spray booth, go over just a light coat. You don't have to soak it in it. You don't want any runs or drips. Just a nice, light, even coat of the sealer. A couple other things, Micro Scale, who makes the stuff we're going to use later for setting, they make a liquid decal film.
Yeah, I had some of that years ago.
So my understanding is you could put this into an airbrush and spray it over and seal it. I have not used it. I don't know. Another feature of this that it says is you can restore old decals. So like if you've got like a model car kit from the 1970s sitting around, those decals could be a little crumbly, maybe a little yellowed. This product is supposed to be able to help revive that. I haven't done it, but I know that this does work to restore old decals. I have used this on old decal sheets, so I can stand by it. Another thing that I know just from watching YouTube videos, somebody that I saw printed out a sheet that they were going to put onto their mug, and they said you had to seal it. And I was just flabbergasted. They went and they got a Minwax varnish and put that over it like it was a piece of wood.
Oh.
And it worked. They put it on their mug. It worked. So who am I to judge? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. So seal it however works best for you is the bottom line. I can show you what I use. Maybe it's more expensive. I don't know. But you gotta seal it. And that stuff dries super quick. I'm talking like within 10 minutes, you can be cutting it, stick it in water, and put it on your model.
Huh.
So any other questions so far as we're moving along here?
I don't think so at the moment.
Okay.
How about you, Sean? You awake?
Yeah, I'm awake.
Oh, okay.
I'm just taking it all in.
So one of the things that we had people ask me questions about, because I was asking friends like, hey, what do you want to learn about in the decal show? And the number one thing that I got from people was number boards. How do you treat number boards? So I'm still kind of discussing it here in the design phase because we have to figure out, are we going to print white numbers that we're going to stick onto our model train? Or I happen to have some here that if you guys have seen that SD40 that I did, these are the actual number board decals that I printed up. So I printed up just black decals that I was able to stick on.
Yeah.
So
want me to put the pictures of those GP40s up?
Yeah, bring those up because there's kind of two approach number boards.
Ooh.
Wow, we keep.
Yeah, and it got when I shared like the couple different things at the same time, it got everything all shifted around.
Here's a lady. All right. So these are two high hood GP40s. These were built by Rex. They were originally Norfolk and Western, and then Jeremy owns the one on the left, and I own the one on the right. And these were decaled with micro scale decals, so name brand, high-end printed decals. And this exhibits kind of two different ways to address number boards. Jeremy went with keeping the number board clear. So he stripped the paint, he stripped the numbers, he just completely stripped it bare to that clear plastic and then he put the black decals over it to number it. It definitely glows in the daytime, and it's definitely a look, you know, if that's what you're into. Mine's on the right. I have the 1350, and what I did was I painted the number board white first, just with a real light coat of white paint, and I just used a paint marker. I didn't use a brush. I used a paint marker. And then I put the black numbers over the white. Mine will still glow at night, but it doesn't light up in the day like Jeremy's does. So kind of personal preference there. You might notice that some number boards out there are actually a black number board with a light font with like a white writing on it. Though I would do the exact opposite type of thing there. I might paint it black and then put white number decals on. You can design a black decal that is hollow, that is clear where the numbers are, and you could put that on. There's multiple ways to approach it, and it's up to the modeler. There's no one right way to do it, but to help kind of demo, if you want to switch over to the close-up cam, I actually have 2 real number boards here.
Ooh.
So this is off of a, I don't know which camera we're going to here. So this is a real number board off of a former Conrail. I think it's off of an SD. I don't exactly remember. But this, it's not printed on the front, okay? Like decals, we print on the viewing side. This has stuff stuck on the back. So let's look at what's actually on the back. And you'll notice they put the numbers on, and then they went over it with this white. And you can see the white's actually kind of peeling here. So that's like a big white sticker, vinyl sticker over that. And that produced this look of a black number on a white background, and it glows with the light.
Interesting.
So that's how the real thing works. So yeah, my model, I'm doing it on the front side. I'm painting the front side white, and then I'm putting black decals on, but it can still glow, and it reproduces the same effect. I don't know anybody who's crazy enough to actually try to mimic this, where they print the numbers backwards, stick it in, and then go over it with white. You're more than welcome to try. I'd love to hear about it, but I think that's a little much. I happen to have that other type. Here's an example. This is off of a GP35 that was a former Penn Central that then went to Conrail. So this is 2297. So let's look at the back. And here it's really peeling away, but you get the same idea that it was originally white on there, and then the black like is cut out for it. So it's that concept of like a hollow black will do it. So if you look here, see the number board's really worn away, so you can see through. So that's very much like Jeremy's design, where you can see on the inside, but that's only because it's worn away. So when we put this up to the light, you can see pure light spiking through at some spots, but then just glowing at others. So I hope that gives you guys some information about how real number boards are made and my suggestions on how to model them. Do you guys have any other questions while we're going along here?
I'm trying to make sure that I'm thinking we're not to that yet. We're gonna get to talking about removing numbers off the car, right?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do right now.
All right.
So I have here one of those Conrail Gons, and I'm gonna take off this 3 so that we can put that 4 decal on. So I'm now going to refer you to those micro scale setting solutions. These are a mild acid, and we're going to talk a little bit more about these when it comes to applying them to a decal. This is a weaker acid, the red label. This is the blue label. This is a stronger acid. The bottle here says this is for removing decals, whereas the red says it's just for setting decals.
Okay.
So I'm going to use a bit of the blue to help remove it, and I'm going to use a very special pencil. get one out here. And this is available on Amazon. It is a Faber-Castell whatever. If you guys can read that, maybe we'll put a link, or we can drop the name in a comment or something like that. But what you're looking for, it looks like a pencil, but on the inside is a white eraser. I don't know if you can see that. So it's not a drawing type pencil. And it's also identifiable because it has a brush on the rear end of it. So when you're looking for these, you want to look for the ones that have the white eraser interior and then the brush on the butt end.
Okay.
So all I'm going to do is, much like if you had a quill pen and you were writing ye olde stuff to Ben Franklin, I'm just dipping this into the acid and then using it to go over this 3. And as you see, starting to wear away the 3. Grab a napkin, just something to soak it up. So you can see, just in that little bit amount of time. So this white eraser has a little bit of an abrasive in it. And if you work too hard, you can go right through the white, you can go right through the brown, you can strip a lot of stuff pretty quickly with one of these. So there's just a little bit of an outline, faint outline of the 3. So this is a good tip if you're weathering stuff and you want to make your numbers look worn and weathered. Here you go. Here's one way you can take factory numbers and wear them down, or as we're doing here, completely remove them. Just a little trace left.
Does it do any good to like let it soak for a little bit before you do that, Charlie, or no?
Well, that will soften a lot of stuff, and if I do that, it tends to go right through down to the bare plastic. So I don't. You guys might have a different technique out there in the internet, but I'm calling that 3 gone.
Okay.
And if you wanted to be even slower about it, you could use the red label acid. I'm going quickly just because of time constraints with the show.
Okay.
All right. So we're now ready to start putting on decals. We've got 4s we want to put on this. We've got Union Pacific stuff we want to put onto a car. So let's get rocking and rolling. Let's talk about first prep. You want to have a nice, clean, smooth surface. So if this was weathered, that wouldn't be good because the decals aren't going to want to stick to it. If you've just painted your own train car, go over it with that gloss clear to seal everything and also to give you a nice, smooth surface. For tonight's show, I'm purposely picking a car that does not have a nice, smooth surface. This is one of those MrPictovid high side Gons that's narrow gauge. And if you get in close, you'll notice that there's wood grain detail, all sorts of little nooks and crannies to try to get a decal to sit on.
Real quick, Charlie, Happy Valley Hobbies was asking the number 3, was it typograph or decal?
The 3 on the Aristo?
Yeah.
The way that they do that is called pad printing. So they paint the whole car, and then they have like a metal piece that has like a little recess for where it wants the shape to be. It squeegees some ink across that, and then a pad goes and presses on that, lifts up, and then presses onto the train car. So it's not a decal. It's not like they used edging type thing to paint through. A stencil, that's the word. It's not like they used a stencil to paint through. It's pad printed. So sometimes it's more of an ink, but it's really more like a paint. But the way that it's applied is, like I said, through that pad, almost like a rubber stamp methodology, but it's
okay.
a big poofy pad. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm going to set this car aside. We'll do well, what do you guys want to do first, the 4 or the UP?
Let's do the 4.
Okay. Since we're here. So we've got the nice clean car and it's happy and everything. Well, we're going to need to soak the decal into something in order to get it wet. This is water slide transfer. So a couple things. You need to use distilled water. So I have to have some brand name distilled water here. I've been using this jug for months to do decal work. You got to use distilled water instead of tap water because tap water can have dissolved solids in it. And when it dries, it will leave like a crusty halo sort of around it. Like if you've ever had water dry up in your glass and you notice that white line where it was, we don't want to have those contaminants with our decals. We want it to be nice, clean, pure distilled water. An interesting thing has happened though with this bottle because I've been using it for a year and sometimes it sits around open. CO2 that's in the atmosphere can get together with some of the H2O that's in the water and form a slight acid, a carbonic acid. And this bottle of distilled water has actually turned a slight acid. And I'm going to demonstrate some of the acids that are relevant here. So let me just show you. We'll pour out just a little bit of this. This is litmus paper, like you might have had in chemistry class in school. So when I dip it into there, changes color just slightly. And it kind of goes, what do you think, like into the 6 realm? So to be in a 7, it's kind of approaching a 6 acid. It's a very, very mild acid. It's not something super strong. But for comparison, let's look at these setting solutions because we're going to be using these in a little bit. So these are acetic acid. This is the red label, so this is the more mild. And again, this one's kind of approaching that 6 to 5, 5.5 to 6 color for an acid. And the blue label is a much stronger acid. There we go. Now you're down into the 4 range. And I've seen a lot of people who talk about, oh, you don't have to buy the microscale stuff. You can just use distilled white vinegar. Got some here from the grocery store. So let's check the acidity of vinegar. Everything in here is going to smell like a sandwich shop in a minute. But so it's vinegar.
Like a sandwich shop?
Yeah, did you ever go to a sandwich shop? They got vinegar and oil and vinegar on your sandwich.
Oh, okay. I wasn't thinking about that.
So this is an even stronger acid. I'm calling this into the 3. So, maybe it's a 4. So this is a pretty strong acid, but it's not just acetic acid. There's often other acids that are formed when they make vinegar. I don't use the vinegar. I think it's a little too strong, and I don't trust what other acids are in it. So just a little bit of science for you guys. So for tonight, let's use a brand new bottle of distilled water. And I'm just going to pour this into a little shallow plate that I have because I don't need a great depth. Just a little spot of water. Find my cap here. All right, so we got our water ready. Put that over here. Grab the gun. And that here. Now we need a 4. So I'm going to go to my decal sheet and I'm going to cut out a 4. I'm going to show you guys I have 2 different pairs of scissors that I like to use. The first is your regular, these happen to be titanium Scotch scissors, but I keep my pair of scissors separate from all the other scissors in the house so that they don't get any little nicks or bumps in them like you might get if you're opening lots of packages that come to the house or you're cutting up rope. This way I've got nice, clean scissors. And I use this for the big cutting. And then I use these, which are called iris scissors. So these are a surgical pair of scissors. You can find these on Amazon and tons of other places. These are super sharp. If you're not careful, you can very easily cut the tip of your finger off. But these are excellent to get in and do all the fine cutting that you want to do around a decal.
Wow.
So one of the things that I think is the future is not just that I'm able to print the decal, but there's those circuit cutters out there that people use to cut like iron-on patches or if they're doing quilting. And I have seen people have been able to put like a black register line around the decal that they've printed, load it into their circuit cutter, and then let the circuit machine go to town on it and cut out the decal. So that would work for you guys that can't print white, that are going to use the pure white sheet of decal paper. So I've cut the 4. I'm just going to stick the 4 into the water. I'm going to let it sit there. So that way, if you could use a circuit cutter to cut the stuff, you would have a perfect, nice edge along what is the decal. So you wouldn't have to sit here with scissors. So I'm going to dip my fingers in here, just help clean my fingers. But I'm also going to wash the area on the car to make sure that there's no other contaminants, no oil residue from my finger, none of that stuff from the pencil eraser. I want to make sure that everything's nice and clean. So I'm using distilled water to clean that right out of the pan there. Now, depending on the size of the decal, you might need to use tweezers if you're playing with tiny stuff. I'm just going to use my big old meaty hot dog fingers. So it's wet. What I'm doing now is I'm just sort of feeling it to feel if it is like about to come off. It just needs a little bit more soak time. I like to use paper napkins. They're very absorbent and they're also soft as opposed to paper towels. It can be a little scratchy. So if you have to soak up any water, there we go. Actually popped off, which is totally what I didn't want to have happen. I have it stuck to my finger. I'll try and transfer it over. So there it is. I've done a terrible job. It's almost like I'm showing you what not to do, as if I planned this. I don't know. There we go. They're pretty forgiving. So I can get that 4 into place there. And I'm just going to hit it with a little. So there's a 4 on there. Quick and dirty. So we stripped the 3 off, we put a 4 on. But take a look at that, though. First off, I did a really poor job. I put it up too high. I had it stuck to my finger. I did it all wrong. But look like the inside of the 4, the hole in it. I think that's like a bigger hole than this 4. It's like it's the wrong font. Use your words. Okay. Oh, okay. No, Shelly was trying to talk to me and didn't use her words. So what we've done is we've managed to put the wrong 4 onto here. I used the Conrail font to come up with this 4. I don't know what aristo-craft did. So I'm going to take this off, and you can try and, oh, okay, sure. Comes right off of my finger. When I was going to demo that doesn't ever happen.
It's magic.
Really well. Yeah. See, now this is the part I didn't plan for. We're going to stick it back on there in its ugliness. So, like I was saying, we want to take that 4 off. Quick and easy way to remove decals that haven't been sealed yet. I mean, like sealed to the car. Scotch tape. This stuff sucks up decals super easy. Put it on, you burnish it a little bit. You pick up the tape and you remove the decal. So Andrew, do you happen to have a video where I work with a picture of the 4 and turn it into a decal?
Let's see here. Yep, I do have that.
While you get ready to play that, I'm going to cut out this 4 that I happen to have handy here for just such an occasion.
You're so prepared.
It's almost like I knew it would be wrong or something. I don't know.
I just want to know, what are the winning lotto numbers?
I can tell you yesterday's winning lotto numbers. I'm
That's
very
pretty
good at predicting the past.
You know, I never thought about that.
You didn't specify which day you wanted to know the.
All right. So
here's the video that you
4.
guys are watching there. I took a picture side on, then we go into Photoshop, and I do the same type of thing that I do with the Union Pacific car, except it's just black and white, so we don't have to work with all the colors and getting everything nice and crisp and clean and clear. So you can see some irregularities in the paint and the surface area there that was making it not be quite as pretty of a 4. So I just spent a few seconds in Photoshop to clean it up. And now I can replicate the aristo-craft number 4. So I don't know what font they used.
Aristo font.
Yeah. So just clean it up a little bit there, make it a little bit crisper. I go around the edges then with a line tool just to define the lines better. But this is what I talk about using a photo versus a font. The font got me a 4, but it doesn't match. The photo got me a matching 4. Now, my friend Joe Donchez, his theory is if anybody notices a problem like that, just run the train faster. That'll take care.
I guess that works.
Yeah. So again, if I'm spending the time to print decals and to make decals and everything, I want it to be right. So maybe flip back over to the close-up cam.
Sure thing.
I spent that time while you were watching the video cutting out another 4 that I am sticking into the water now. I'm also going to do something a little different just to help things get all pretty. I'm going to take a little bit of the red decal setting solution and I'm going to put that where the 4 is going to go. Just make a little puddle there. So when I slide the decal off, it's going to go into a little puddle of acid. Just sort of feeling it here. Got to give it a moment, a little bit more moment in the water until it's ready to pop off. Well, maybe I will use tweezers just to get it out. Okay. So now to help coax it off of there, I've got a toothpick in my hand. Oh, we flipped it over. Trying to do decal, watching myself on a screen. Not the easiest way. I'm able to use the toothpick, just sort of coax it off of that paper. And then I can arrange it, twist it. It's good to look down the sight line to see if it's high or low. But I think that one turned out half decent. Just soak up some of the liquid there.
No, I imagine it might get in the way, but I was just kind of curious when you're trying to get something on the right line, can you put like a piece of like masking tape or something for like your...
You can, sure you can. The problem is it going to be in your way when you go to put the decal on? Because the decal, the way I cut it, has that little bit of extra clear around the 4.
Okay.
So it's not an exact thing. So what I like to do is just sight down the line and use that as my guide with my calibrated eyeball to go, does that look too tall maybe? Is that too high?
I don't know. Looks right to me. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
All right. So what I did then while we were chatting is I just put a little bit more of the acid on top with a Q-tip, just dabbed a little bit more, and then don't touch it. Once the acid's on it this way, it'll start to crinkle up a little bit. I'll go very gently around it with the paper, soak up a little bit of the liquid. I don't know if you can see that it's gone a little crunchy looking. I don't know if it's showing up in the camera at all. Let me catch the light on it a little different there. There, you can see it's kind of ripply and everything. That's what the acid is doing to it. It'll settle down. But for now, you just want to let it sit. Just trying to get some of that excess liquid away from it.
We do have a question from someone here, Charlie, and I think it's a matter of what your preference is. But Happy Valley Hobbies was asking if it would be nicer to redo the whole number to make it all matching instead of just trying to match up the one.
It could be, and like you said, it's personal preference. Do you want to take off all the numbers? Do you want to put on multiple decals?
Yeah.
Pick your poison. You're going to have to deal with something unpleasant in some regard. So worrying about mismatch versus stripping off 4, 1, 1, 3, and 4, 1, 1, 1, 3. There's 5 numbers you'd have to strip off.
Yeah, and that's more chances to mess up the paint underneath too with each number, I guess.
Yeah. So now here's the other thing. If I did a 5 with the Conrail font, you guys would never know. It's only because I picked a 4 and that there happens to be a 4 already there that you can compare it to that know that it's wrong. So if I did a 5, a 6, a 7, you probably would never know that there had been a problem. I purposely picked 4 just to demonstrate that, hey, fonts aren't always exactly what you want them to be.
You're making me feel more comfortable about renumbering one of my E8 so they're not both the same number.
So let's do a Union Pacific while we're here. So this has got more layers to it. This isn't just white. This has got all the CMYK stuff done to it. I'm using the big scissors because I'm in a hurry. If I really cared, I would take the time with those iris surgical scissors. Those were designed for doing surgery on the eye.
So if you were taking more time with the other ones, would you actually get in there and cut like around all the curves and everything on that to get rid of the extra film?
Yeah, I would try to cut as close as possible, but I would still leave a little bit of the clear edge because I would rather have a little bit of the clear edge than lose the blue real edge. Once you go too far, you can't put that back, but I can get this to settle down and to suck down onto the onto the plastic.
It's been years since I did any decals, but something I ran into issues with doing the Conrail logo on some HO stuff years ago was if I, in the top of that can opener, in the corner, if I came to like a sharp point in there when I was cutting it out, it seemed to make a tear point on the decal when I was trying to maneuver it. So do you recommend sometimes like not cutting right into the corner, or does sealing it like you did seem to make a difference?
I try to get as close as I can and intricately do it, and just be very careful transporting it from the water over and off of the backing and everything. And what you're raising here, and is also demonstrated with the 4s, it's good to print extras. So I always print extras. I've done tons of decals, and I'm going to continue to do decals, and I'm going to continue to screw up. I've screwed up tons of decals. So you saw I printed 4 4s. I only need to do the 1 4 on each side to make that card number 4, but I've got 2 extra because you saw I screwed up one of those originally font-based things. So I print lots of extras. I'm going to put this one on, and again, kind of wetting my fingers, and I just want to clean the area, get any finger residue off of there. Now I'm going to stick this one in, and I'm going to put him in face down, and it's only because of my experience that I know he's going to curl. Just from having done this, stick him in face down. And while he's in there, I'm once again going to do the advanced method of putting some setting solution onto the train car surface itself. So when I slide the decal, I'm sliding it onto the acid.
Mikey 45013 asked, he says, the one that you left crinkled with the acid, will that hurt the paint just sitting?
No, this is a very, very mild acid. On that topic, though, what I have found is the best time to do decals is after you've painted it, you put your clear coat on, you let your clear coat set up at least, but maybe not harden for several days, kind of wait, maybe wait, like let it sit overnight. When you put the decal on, the paint is hard, but that acid will help it sort of sink into the paint even more, and it just works really well. So I'm going to check the decal here. All I'm doing is just sort of pushing it around so it feels loose. I'm going to bring it up here to where we have our little puddle of acid. Here, I'll move over. You see that? And I'm just going to stick a finger on it and pull away the backing. So I've put it down literally into the waiting acid. I'm going to try and get it lined up horizontally here because I know that there's that wooden line. And then I'm going to hit it with a napkin. Oop, when I hit it with the napkin, it moved it a little bit. I have to hold it. So that acid that's sitting there is going to help it to sink down into that wood grain. But if I push on this, it also helps to push it down into that wood grain. And I can put some acid on top. But I've just sort of squeezed out a lot of that acid that was underneath. So capillary action along the edges will suck it under, and that's fine for a small decal. But for a big decal like this, how do you get the acid all the way through? So what I like to do is use some sort of poking sharp object. So maybe your neighborhood drug dealer will hook you up with a syringe, but this is a perfect example of a very fine, sharp tip. You definitely want to use one of these if you've got bubbles. I haven't really seen any bubbles on this example. Maybe there's one here, or maybe that's just some of the water sitting on top. But I just go along and stipple it. And I'm just poking wee little tiny holes so that acid can get through, and it also gives it a little bit of a stretch area to stretch over that wood grain. So that's one tool you can use. I don't use it that much because I prefer to use like an X-Acto knife. I happen to have one here somewhere. Here. I like a good X-Acto knife, but these get dull pretty quick. And for something like this, you want something super duper sharp. So I happen to have here a scalpel. It has a little protective end, which came off. You can get replacement blades for these. They pop off. Surgeons are really good at twisting to put on new blades. I like this so much better. This is, I don't know if you can, it makes just a better sound than the hypodermic needle. So I'm just randomly going around piercing holes into this decal. You can't see any of these holes because they are so tiny. But if there's little air bubbles in there that you also can't see, this is helping. So I'm going to dab a little bit here. And if you look closely, I think you can start to see some of the wood grain showing through the decal.
Yeah.
Because it's slowly melting into that surface. And I didn't push hard or anything to get it down into that crack, but it's just melting its way down in there. It's stretching itself over. So you can keep coaxing this with a little bit more acid, a little bit more tapping.
Kenny Kincaid was asking why not just use a pin, but I think you pretty much answered that. You wanted something really sharp.
Really, really, really sharp. And also very, very fine. We don't want to put big holes in. We're not trying to make cuts. We're not trying to cut it. We're just trying to pierce it. You can also use the knife. Like I would use a brand new knife to do the poking, stippling technique. But you can also cut out the decal, like on, I've got cardboard here. So if you're really skilled with a knife, you can go along and cut out the decal with a knife. And I do not claim to be skilled with a knife. But as you can see, that makes a perfect cut right through. So there's plenty of ways. If you're good with a knife and you want to cut your decals out with a knife, go right ahead.
Every time you say knife, I want to cut to Crocodile Dundee saying, now that's a knife.
That's not a knife. That mugger. So if you're really good, you can get in much closer, much finer. You could probably cut out that center section of the 4. You could do all sorts of things that I can't do because I'm terrible. But the knife makes a very good decal tool if you're good with one. I'm not. So I stick to poking holes in things with a knife.
Now, how often do you replace your scalpel you're using there, Charlie? Do you get a good bit of use out of one of those?
Oh yeah, like if I was putting this decal onto a smooth surface, I wouldn't be stabbing it nearly as much. Maybe one round of stabbing. And then that knife will last through several train cars. But when it no longer has that sort of bite, like when I drop it in, I can like feel it go into the plastic a little bit, just that little bit. When it loses that bite, then it's still good for cutting, but I'll break out a new knife or put a new blade on. But there's just something about that solid feeling. Like you could see it's really stuck to the train car there, but it's a miniature, teeny tiny little hole. So I think that's looking pretty good. You see the grain popping up through on everything.
Yeah.
Even in different angles of light, doesn't look bad. So even with that clear that I had around the edge, that's just melting right into the rest of the car. What I would do is I would let this sit overnight to dry and then address it tomorrow morning, tomorrow evening, whatever. You can go over it again with acid the next day. There's nothing against doing that. If you want to have it soak in this that little bit more, it didn't get quite perfect up in the corner, you can hit it with a little bit more acid and do it again. Once you're satisfied with it, that's when you want to go over the whole car with a clear coat. And that's when I would reach for the dull coat that I have here. Just because you guys know I'm going to weather the car. I'm not going for the super shiny look. I go for the dull coat. So this lacquer will help melt it in even more. So like you saw, it's a spray lacquer. And just that hitting that decal edge there and everything just helps blend the edge. But one tip that I have, when you go to do your clear coat, do one coat where you have the car upside down, so that if you think about it, the spray is hitting it and running down, and it'll form an edge on what will then be the underside of the decal. Once that dries, flip the car over and do another coat of clear so that you get the top edge. That'll help seal it very, very well because you've done a couple coats. But that edge, like if you think about it, there's the edge of the decal and then there's the car below. It'll create just like a little bit of a bullnose edge if you were to look at it under a microscope. And that helps blend the edge of the decal even more into the train car. So I have a demo. I did the other side of the train car. Put it here so we've got some light. I did it 3 different ways. We'll start over here. I took this one straight out of the printer with no sealer, with no spray sealer at all, and I put it on. And it went on okay, but as you can see, I didn't stab it or anything. It's extremely delicate if you don't seal it. So this could be good technique if you wanted to purposely make a faded, torn, ratty looking logo. So that's it. I just stuck it on there. This one here, I didn't use any setting solution. So if you look, you don't really see the wood grain through it. And you see the edges are very pronounced. So that's what happens if you don't use any setting solution. And then the one over here is exactly like we just did it here live. So you can see the wood grain showing through at every spot. You can't really see that clear edge anymore. It just perfectly melted right into the whole car.
Nice.
But I have not gone over this yet with a clear coat. But if it looks this good before the clear coat, it's going to look perfect once you put a clear coat over it.
Oh, Happy Valley Hobbies was asking what the name of the feline supervisor was that was watching.
Was Jane here? That's Jane St. Clair. She's my little helper. She helps with everything.
And then I see, is it Donna? Donna was asking, would you want to press it into the lines between the boards?
Okay, this gets interesting. If you do that, if you think about it like the whole sheet of decal and then there's the line, when you press it in, the decal is going to get a little shorter. You're going to squish the decal.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah. But with the acid, once you apply the acid to it, it does sort of suck it down in, and you can go along very, very, very gently with the Q-tip or maybe your fingernail because you don't want to do anything too sharp and encourage it. The acid helps it stretch. Like we've seen, it'll stretch over the wood texture and everything. So the acid will actually make it stretch down into that crease. So although, yeah, you kind of want to push it in, you don't want to do that right off the bat and squish it together because now your logo becomes shorter and a little bit disproportionate. So you let the acid stretch it in there for you.
Okay.
What else?
That's the only question I saw pop up so far, at least.
Okay. I did have one thing I forgot to mention earlier. When I talked about putting a clear coat on initially, as well as now that you're done, in the professional hobby world, they like to use this Pledge floor care finisher. Okay. They'll put it into an airbrush and spray that over. This is also really good if you build model airplanes as a way to paint the canopies and have them be nice and crystal clear looking. So, we don't really use it too much in the model train world, but the guys that are out there, the guys and gals out there that are making the model scenes for like museums and those kind of displays, they like to use this Pledge floor care product. So just
interesting.
Shout out. Oh, yeah, and another thing, just as sort of a difference, this is out of a car kit. So this is a professionally printed set of decals. And I don't know if you can catch the light here, but you can see that each decal has an edge to it. Kind of look over in here, maybe. I can catch the light there. You can see.
Yeah, I see it.
So where I think that sucrose dextrose layer has been printed onto the paper, and then the decal itself was printed on top.
Huh.
So that's where I was kind of thinking, if we could use that circuit cutter to cut out the decal, It would do a lot of good. So I think that's the future that I want to look into with the professional decal making stuff. So the high-end stuff, you don't have to cut it as close because the decal itself is already ready to go right off of that backing.
Interesting. Yeah, I never noticed that. I mean, it's been years since I built plastic model cars, but
unfortunately, we can't print like a sucrose level and then print decals on top. They can, but they're also making hundreds of those cards. So I'm assuming that's screen printed on. I'm not sure how that is done.
Yeah.
So my concern right now, we had talked about maybe doing that other thing.
Yeah.
Did you have time to do that?
I think so. We got quite a. Do you have time to do that? How's that?
Yeah, I do. I just wasn't sure for your time constraints on your show.
No, we got. Looks like we had some more people pop in to watch. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing we talked about showing you guys is graffiti. It's highly related. So, Andrew, if you want to pull up that photo that I provided of the Ichabod.
I can do that.
I'm going to use this exact same card, but I'm going to flip it over. So I'm going to put it on here.
Let's see. You said the Ichabod. Oh, okay, there it is.
Where did I put the...
So is this one we're talking about, Charlie?
Yes. So I photographed that train car coming out of Enola Yard, and it's got an ICH for an ick on there. So I'm going to replicate that by hand painting it. You could print a decal of it, and I've done decal graffiti things. I think it's a lot more satisfying to hand print graffiti, but it's all up to you guys. What I do with it is the exact same thing that we would do if it was a decal, where I go through and I kind of stretch it and make everything perfectly level and horizontal and all that stuff. I don't think there's a video of it, but I think that maybe there's a video. I forget what all I gave you for this.
I just have I have two pictures and a close-up picture of this one.
Right. Well, load the second picture. I think that's perhaps the fixed, the fixed vertical, horizontal stuff. I'm gonna grab a swig here. Well, yep, there you go. Whenever it loads slow, we know that's what it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say everything else like that I preloaded when we were doing other stuff pops right up.
Yeah.
Drop this one in here and it wants to crawl along again.
It gives me a chance to get something to drink. So
just disclaimer notice. We're not condoning you go out and trespass and do graffiti on real railway equipment.
No, I am not promoting graffiti, but to me, like weathering, it happens in the real world. I wish all the train cars would never, ever get rust on them. I wish that they would never, ever get graffiti on them, that they always look brand new out of the box. But the reality is that doesn't happen in life. And because I model real life, I need to replicate the same stuff. So that's why we did weathering before. So kind of uninteresting there. Maybe load the next picture, which I think is just the tighter crop then.
Yep. There we go.
There we go. So that's what I have here printed out in black and white. I could take that and I could spend some time in Photoshop and clean up the edges, just like you saw with the 4 or the Union Pacific. And I could print that. I could print the white background. I could print the black ICH part, just like we've talked about for decals. But what we're going to do here is we're going to hand paint it instead.
Okay.
So if you flip back to close-up cam, I printed it out in black and white. And for the sizing, I had that smaller one, but I kind of like the bigger one. So I'm going to, just because I looked at this earlier, I'm just going to cut this out, kind of like it was a decal, but I don't have to be as exact because I'm not applying it directly. And I'm going to leave a little bit of stuff on the top here, and you'll see why in a moment. So what I've ended up with is just a black and white printout of that ick. And I'm going to figure out where I want it to go on my rail car, and it's pretty simple to just line it up with the bottom of the gon. Actually, I'm going to trim a little bit more of that paper off. I got a little too proud there. So we've located where we want to put the ICH. I'm going to put a piece of tape across the top once we have it set. Yeah, it's sticky tape. So what this tape does for me now is it acts like a hinge. I can flip this up and I can put it back down in the exact same spot. So the trick now is we need to get these lines, this outline of the ICH stuff, onto the train car. And here is the secret. Carbon paper. I'm going to stick the carbon paper underneath the ICH. I'm going to take a pen, ballpoint pen, and I am going to draw the outline of the ICH. While I'm doing this, why don't you guys vote for what color I should use to paint the ICH?
Sounds like a good idea.
I happen to have like a pale blue and sort of a light green. So why don't you start a poll in the chat there, Andrew?
For blue or green?
Yeah. So while I'm tracing this, I'm tracing the background as well as the foreground. I'm tracing all of the major lines that I need to know for this ICH. In fact, there's little boxes over here that are part of it. It's got little circle things to note. Let's go work on this H here. Got that poll up and going?
I do. So far, we got 56% for blue and 44% for green.
Wow. I thought blue would run away with it.
Yeah, it's staying a little bit closer than I thought. Oh, green just took it over. 55% for green, 45% for blue.
So let's take a look. It's hard to see, but there's lines there.
Our friend Kyle's said he'd like pink, Charlie.
Well, I can do an orange. I've got orange here.
And Nico would like to know, how do we vote for none? Well, that's not an option, Nico. Get with the program.
Yeah, there's no none option. So I'm just going to go over these just to make extra sure that I can see the lines that I need to see, especially up here in this H, because I'm going to start with the H because I'm left-handed and our camera operator is to my right.
No, John, we can't have lavender. Puce. I'm not sure what the heck color puce is.
Do you know what fuchsia looks like?
Yeah.
Can you spell fuchsia? Please don't. This is a family-friendly show.
Let's see. That blue's leading again. That's up to 56%, 44% green.
Well, I'll leave it to you for when you want to call the poll done.
Well, whenever you're to the point where we're going to go to the color, I can end the poll.
Oh, let's kind of make sure I got all the H parts here that I need to see. So what I'm going to do when I'm painting is flip back and forth because it's a little hard to see exactly where everything should be, but I have a general idea, and then I can always look at the original artwork. So call it. Who's the winner?
All right. So it looks like our winner is blue at 53%.
All right. So this is a paint marker. If you guys aren't familiar, there's paint in here. There's a little ball bearing that you can use to shake it up. Sometimes it's a marble. They have a fibrous tip that when you depress it, it pushes open a spring-loaded button that allows paint to flow past the button, the valve, and then it soaks through the tip. So that's all this is. So it's a controlled way of painting the paint. So this is actually paint in here. It's not an ink. This Posca brand is Asian. I think it's Japanese. They make tons of awesome markers. Oh, if I have, oh, here. They have this whole set that I got. I do tons of graffiti work from all these. So there's a pink in there. These are very fine tips. So these are good if you're working on HO cars. I picked a big tip because we're trying to go quickly. There's two schools of thought. I like to fill in everything with the color first. I'm just looking at that H. My friend Jeremy, when he does his painting, he likes to draw the outside lines in black first and then go back and fill in the center, because that way you get a nice thin black line. I just buy thinner black markers because I like the look of when you finish it with black. There's that C. So this H comes down here, goes across there. So you can see how this is a lot more intricate because of all the raised surfaces. But you could definitely get a decal to stretch over all of these rivets and everything. But there's something to me about the look of the hand-painted graffiti that you just don't get with a decal. So this is sort of just paint by numbers at this point. Sorry, I'm killing the light there with my hand. And I'm also going to apologize to all the Conrail fans that we're going right over the Conrail can opener, but this is...
John was saying it's okay. I told him we could see if you have some Lehigh Valley to graffiti up for him.
Oh, yeah, sure. Of course we could. Leaky Valley.
Uh-oh. Joseph Lipinski says you're crying on the inside right now, Sean. Just bring some of your cars to the East Coast show in 2 weeks, Sean. I'm sure we can get Charlie to draw all over them for you.
You can draw caricatures. So this is the technique that I've used. Like if you've any of the fans out there have seen any of my graffiti work or the stuff that was in the museum, I did this technique using the carbon paper tracing for everything except for Jessica Rabbit. That one I hand sketched freehand onto the train car.
Wow.
So hopefully this is drying up here on the H side. When you're doing this, keep in mind that because it's an aerosol spray can that we're mimicking, it doesn't always have a perfectly opaque look to it. It kind of has like a shaky look at times. So it doesn't look all that great there because it's just the base color.
Okay.
But if we go over it, say with a black, go around the edges, we can really sharpen up the look.
And I do have to say, although I don't, condone graffiti on other real property, there's definitely some talent with spray cans out there.
Oh yeah, the fade look and everything that they can do is just. Now, I don't recommend putting black on as quickly as I am. That you should have let this blue dry more. But
Happy Valley Hobbies was asking, when did graffiti become popular?
Well, the first history of graffiti type of thing is traced to a guy in Philadelphia that put his girl's name up on a wall in the late 70s.
Oh, wow.
But it really became a thing on New York City subway cars into the early 80s. But then as the subways started to really crack down on things and clean every train before it went out, that's when graph artists started to look to other things on rails. And that's when you started to see paint on freight.
Huh.
Really into the 90s when that, not that it wasn't occurring, but
yeah,
when the taggers in Brooklyn and everything could keep going, when things changed, that's when it really shifted over to trains.
Now I see Canadian Railroad said that it didn't show up in Canada until the 2000s as far as graffiti.
Well, it being North America and stuff moving around, you had some, but there Fatso, he's from Canada. There's a documentary where he goes out to try to find the very last solid cold reefer.
Oh, wow.
He put a Fatso tag up on that.
Wow, that's actually looking a lot different with the black outline around it.
Yeah, the black outline really sets it up. I did this in a hurry. What would also happen then is you would have some sort of depth to the thing. Like if you notice, I drew back here, there should be thickness to this eye. So this should get filled in with something. So I'm going to put a little white there.
Okay.
Just for contrast. It's not exactly what Ick did, but this also then helps, I think, to define the letter, the thickness of the letter. And then this white would also get a black outline.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking, Sean, that this would have been about the time that Heath should have popped in and asked about doing that on N scale cars.
Yeah.
N scale, I would recommend printing a decal, calling it quits. I mean, there is another tool in my arsenal I didn't show you. I happen to have a loop here.
A loop?
Yeah, like a magnifying glass.
Oh, okay.
I had to use that when I put decals onto the trucks of some of my cars now. If you've noticed, modern freight trains, the trucks all have the road number of the car that they support. This way, if there's an accident and you've got a bunch of wheel sets piled up over there and the cars are over here, it helps with the accident reconstruction effort to try to figure out what was where originally to then see how did it ended up where it is now. And all that good stuff.
Huh. Nico said he still doesn't like graffiti. Well, how do you know until you try it, Nico? I'm pretty sure I saw Vincent in here. He was all for the graffiti.
So you can add some of these definition lines.
Oh, Happy Valley Hobbies says Z-scale graffiti. Yeah, no, I think we'll pass on that.
Well, the cool thing with Z-scale and N-scale, especially Z, I have done cars where I printed the entire car side as a decal. So the road number, the marking, the reporting number, the load weight, weathering already on it, and the graffiti all in one decal, because you figure it's the size of this pen cap. So the decals no bigger than the Union Pacific thing that we did. So just do the entire car all in one decal, the weathering, everything. Just put it all together in one. So this is not my best graffiti ever. I'm kind of, if you've ever tried to paint while watching yourself on lag on a screen, it's very difficult. But this is a quick and dirty way to demonstrate a very ugly version of an ick. Oh wait, I should definitely draw that C where it over goes the eye. That definitely needs some lineage there.
That's an interesting comment there from Mikey saying about that. Well, I don't know if I really consider pro graffiti artists, but he's saying the pros never go over the car numbers since railroads will paint over them more than
So there's a
likely.
couple things on that. The graffiti artists have learned that if you paint over the road number, your car will get painted back more quickly, or at least patched. You've probably seen patches where they'll put like a black rectangle and then the road number put back over.
Yeah.
They're not there to try to preserve the artwork from the graffiti artist. So graffiti artists have learned, and they actually go out now with rolls of tape, and they will tape out the road numbers. They won't do a big block. They will tape out each little part, paint their whole thing, and then peel up the tape, just as if they were doing a professional line job kind of thing. Like if they were painting your house and they wanted to go around the windows, they do the exact same thing to that. To a lesser degree, like the lube plate and stuff can sometimes get patched out. And again, graffiti artists are pretty keen on staying away from those things. But the major thing is the road number, because if the railroad can't see the road number, it becomes very difficult to try to dispatch cars and make up way bills and everything. So if you paint over that, if you're a graffiti artist, the railroad is going to be very quick to paint you back. Other things like Reading and Northern, they despise graffiti. So if there's ever graffiti on any of their rolling stock, they very, very quickly paint that back. So you will hardly ever see graffiti on Reading and Northern cars. So just don't bother. And then there's also graffiti wars where one group is fighting against another group. So they'll patch out each other's stuff and paint over it and diss each other. And if you get into the graffiti subculture and start learning about some of the different artists, like Ick, the guy who did this, Ichabod, he lives up in the Massachusetts, kind of Boston area. One of the other guys, Jace, he actually works for one of the spray paint companies out in Montana. He is super prolific as well as Ick. If you go watch freight trains and you see some mixed freights go by, 2 or 3 trains, you're guaranteed to see an Ick, probably a Jace as well.
Yeah. Well, that came out a lot simpler than what I thought it was going to be to do that, I guess.
There's the black and white that I was working from. Oh, look, he has some like vertical lines and stuff into it. And I also missed these little boxes he's got going on here. I can go paint them in too. But notice he stayed away from the lube plate that was on the original car.
Yeah.
He's also got up here the Circle T. That's the crew that he is in. And you will often see Why Me right next to the Circle T. So you can see that very faintly there. Yeah. YME, Year-Round Metal Enjoyment. That's the crew that he is in. So it's just a real quick, not a very well done copy of an Ick. Screwed up the part of the H there, but for trying to draw into a window that I don't control, that I'll live with that. So what other questions do you guys have about decals, graffiti painting?
I'm looking to see here if anybody asked any questions so far. Scrolling back through, I'm not seeing anything that popped up while we were talking, at least.
Okay.
I'm seeing comments, people are liking what you've shown them tonight so far.
That's good. Got a little bit into chemistry, got a little bit into computer design work of stuff. And again, you don't have to do all the crazy stuff that I do. You can have the same number boards on your engine, and I am sure you'll be happier than I am with my mismatched number boards. It's all about what degree you find acceptable. How much work are you willing to put into trying to model the real world, whether it involves graffiti, mismatched number boards, blah, 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 blah. So this is some of the crazy stuff that I do to pass the time.
What was this question? What other kinds of defacing are there?
Well, there's monikers. You can get these, like it's like solid ink in the shape of a marker kind of thing. And they're very much smaller. They're not a big piece like this. They're typically around the ladders and stuff, but people will draw little monikers. Maybe it's like a guy in a sombrero. You often see that. Ick even does some stuff that he puts out there. So that's like a whole other culture of people that aren't into spray paint or even rollers, though they use rollers a lot for some of the bigger pieces. But that's a whole other subculture as well. And I've done a couple decals because it's just way too small for me to try to draw in G scale, where I've taken pictures of the monikers, the little drawings, and I've made decals and I'm stuck them on cars. Nobody's ever seen them. Nobody's ever said, hey, what's that? Just because it's so small and it's so faint. I know it's there because I modeled the prototype that I wanted to model, but like nobody ever sees it. But that's a whole other culture, the monikers.
Nico was asking if the car has 4-track lowering kits on it.
No, these are bone stock plastic wheel junk things. And to be totally honest with you guys, the reason I was willing to put this here is because I'm planning to cut this end of the car off and stitch 2 Gons together and make a bigger one. So that's why I didn't care what we were doing here. And the flip side is the thing that we renumbered to 4. So that's that same end of the car I'm planning to cut off and basically throw away.
Ah, okay.
So I had bigger plans than just what we were doing here tonight. This 4 is really fictitious. It doesn't matter to me at all, but it was just a nice little thing to demo.
And a plug for Nico there. He does have a new website up, 4trackrr.store, for anybody that's seen the lowering kits and other items that Nico offers.
Yeah, I used one of Nico's kits on an LGB, excuse me, an LGB covered hopper that I've been working on.
Oh,
and
nice.
I'm going to need to get some more from him. So he's done a really good job with that stuff.
Let's see. Canadian Railroads was still waiting for you to get the Bunsen burner out.
Well, here's my loop. This is the magnifying glass. I have one that has like an LED light so that I can go and look at details a little easier.
Oh.
My aging eyes. So that's what I used because, like I said, I was putting decals on the trucks. So those are really small decals.
That's getting down to details there. I see Sparky 107 was asking, have you done a full side of an auto rack for graffiti?
I personally have not. Jeremy has. I don't own any auto racks right now. I owned one and it went to Jeremy for Christmas. He has a bunch of auto racks. He's done some stuff. I just don't own any. But the same technique is what he used. So the whole thing is like when Kyle heard I was going to show you the big secret is the use of the carbon paper. That's the trick. You size the thing just like it's a decal, but then you trace it with your carbon paper. And if you guys are familiar with my big Ichabod covered hopper car that has all the skulls in it and everything, what I did was I painted the blue and I let it dry overnight. And then I was able to go back over the blue and draw the skulls and pull it up and then paint the skulls in. Let that dry. So it was a several day process, but I kept being able to flip back and forth with the hinge and then drawing onto the painted surface again with the carbon paper to get whatever detail it is I need to fill in next. So is that going back and forth, back and forth.
Now I do see Bill Lynch asked, would you seal the graffiti in with a clear coat when you're done?
It doesn't really make much of a difference because this is paint, and the paint sometimes that they put on is a glossy paint and it stands out different from the base car itself. It tends to weather in. It depends on what kind of car you're modeling. Is it a relatively new car that somebody put graffiti on? Is it an older car and you're going to weather it anyway? It all depends what look you're going for. You don't have to because I'm using paint, so this isn't just going to easily rub off. It's not chalk, like the weathering chalk stuff that easily wears off unless you clear coat it. It's not a decal because decals can come off too if you bump them and everything. Yeah. So you need to seal it. You don't necessarily need to seal this, but typically I do go over it with the dull coat, just because after it's been out for even a few months, it tends to lose that shine that it had when the artist originally put it up on the car. And I've also done a couple cars where I purposely put the graffiti on early, and then I put weathering over it. So I have rust streaking through the graffiti and everything, and then put like a brand new piece of graffiti on top of that, because that's what I saw in the prototype car. Somebody 10 years ago put graffiti on, it's worn away, it's washed away. Somebody put some new graffiti over top of that. It's all what your final effect is. What are you going after?
Okay. Let's see. Sparky 107 was asking, is airbrushing graffiti too hard compared to decals?
I've played with airbrushing, and airbrushing is more like the actual spray can. So I think you could create a wonderful effect, because what I can't do easily with these paints is create a fade where you've got like a blue and an orange, and then where they meet, they just sort of have that nice hazy fade in between. This tends to be more of a straight line. It's very difficult to sort of blend the colors. But if you have an airbrush, like if you've seen flames on a car or something like that, you know how it can just fade right out? Well, you can do that with an airbrush. In order to print, or to paint rather, this small with an airbrush becomes rather difficult. If you are a super skilled airbrush artist, like I've gone to fairs and seen people that can do airbrushing onto t-shirts and stuff, and they can do all sorts of final details and sign their name super tiny and everything. More power to you if you're able to do it. I'm not that skilled with an airbrush. I don't know if you want to show some of the demo photos of some of the decal stuff that I've done. If you have any of those car end ones, I wanted to show that one of the tricks that I like to do a lot is I sneak decals onto the car that I do that say decals by Zimwiz. That's my graffiti name. So I'll often sneak that onto like the end of a car where you typically don't look too much, but I'll sneak that in with, like the road name, the reporting marks, and decals by Zimwiz. So I just slip in a tiny little thing there. So if anybody ever buys a car on eBay and it has decals by Zimwiz that you discover hidden somewhere, that's one of my cars. So I don't know if you're...
it's going to be another one of them slow loading photos for some reason.
But
I was going to say, while I was waiting for that to load, I see Ken Hoffman commented. He says, so we can weather decal and graffiti via the Zim method.
Yes, you can.
Which reminds me, maybe I didn't put a link to it in the description of the video, but if anybody missed the show that Charlie did before on weathering, I highly recommend you go back and check that one. I'll have to update the description with the link to it. So that seemed to be a pretty popular one.
Yeah, so we haven't covered how to paint your model train car. That's sort of been left up to you, but...
Is this one of the ones you were looking for, Charlie?
Sure. I was looking for the end of a boxcar if you're looking for a picture. But this Canandaigua Southern, I worked with photos of an O-scale car in order to come up with the lettering and the logo and everything for this car.
Yeah, let's see. I got one. Here's the end. Hopefully it doesn't take as long to load.
Sure seems to be. There we go.
There we go.
If you zoom in on all the little tiny text there. So this is an SPC, South Pacific Coast car.
Yep.
So it's SPC number 90. And then shift down a little.
Down a little.
Right. Yeah, you got the brake, you got the draft gear, and then look, decals by Zimwiz.
Oh yeah, how about that?
So just a little hidden thing. So if you start doing your own decal stuff and you want to sign your name to your work, just slip in a tiny little decal that nobody will ever notice.
Interesting. Mikey was saying, thanks for an amazing show, Charlie.
Hey, well, thanks for watching, Mikey.
That's kind of an interesting comment. Bill Lynch said something about going to a women's nail place and find an artist to spray on graffiti. They do it on fingernails. I've never seen.
Okay. I look forward to seeing your results from that, and maybe that'll be a new trend. Get my nails did, get my hair all beautified, and
I think we'll send Sean down to the nail shop and see how it comes out. You get some can openers on your fingernails, Sean. No. Yeah. That was a lot of knowledge to take in one show. But
a little bit of open the fire hose and drink. But
yeah,
the nice part about these YouTube videos is people can go back and rewatch them. So try to put stuff in here that you can refer back to. Like I said at the start of the show, you might not design your own decals today. You might not print your own decals today, but you can go back and study some of these techniques and the tools that I referenced and play around with some stuff on your own. And maybe you can expand your hobby repertoire and start doing some decal work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm kind of blown away still at this point. I mean, just the amount of stuff that you covered. Organization is key. You got to be organized like Charlie. Don't be organized like me. Then you blame the cat.
She's around here somewhere. She was playing with her ball earlier. I don't know if that made the audio, but
oof, that's kind of scary, Slag Cat. I didn't mean to click on that one, but I could see Sean with highlights.
Alrighty then.
I think Sean would look better with dreadlocks, but that's just me.
Well, does anybody have any in the chat any final questions for Charlie before we wrap it up? I know we've run over here a good bit, so
yeah,
I don't want to drag it out too much longer here.
I apologize for running overtime. Tried to get everything into your time limits.
No, it's all right. My migraine medication kicked in about an hour ago. Sean
Excellent.
Seemed like he took a nap there for a while, so I'm not seeing anybody else pop anything else up in the chat. So,
okay.
Is there anything you want to leave us with, Charlie?
I think Andrew posted some links if you want to check out more of my work. He's got a link to the website for my backyard garden railway, which is called the Smoke and Oak Railroad. You can also check out my YouTube videos. Chances are you've seen a certain snowplow of mine. I'm also a contributing editor to Live Steam magazine, and I hope that you guys out there will consider subscribing and checking out some of the articles that I write there that are related to G-Scale.
Absolutely, and I do. I have all those links in the description for all of that.
Excellent. So I just wanted to get a plug in there. Oh, and earlier we used some photos from my friend Paul in India. He runs P-Line that makes a whole bunch of high-quality brass models. He's done a little bit in 7/8 scale, but mostly 2-foot gauge, narrow gauge, like the Darjeeling Himalayan Railway. I've got his passenger cars. He's currently building an articulated steam engine that he's got coming out soon. So I want to thank Paul for letting us use his photos, and I look forward to showing more of his work. He made those freight cars that we looked at, the brown and the blue stuff.
Yeah,
those were all made by Paul's company P-Line. So just a little shout out to him.
Very nice. All right.
Bring her here. I'll put her on camera.
Let's see. So what, 2 weeks, Sean? We're both going to be at the East Coast Large Scale Train Show. Hey,
here's Jane.
Let's see if we can see a close up of Jane. Hi, Jane. Let's see if we get the right link here. There we go.
And the kisses? Yeah, there's a kissy. There's your kissy girl. So this is my buddy Jane. If you guys are friends with me on Facebook, you've seen lots of pictures of her. So this is Jane St. Clair.
My kitty had to leave the room, or she would have been falling off the shelves behind me by the time we got to this point.
Well, everybody, thanks for
watching.
And I hope everybody learned something from the video. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. All right. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks. We'll be having Big Train Operators Club on to talk to their president and learn about their club and all the good things about them. I'll have something up here in probably about a week with info on it and that. So just make sure you check our website. We'll have it up there. So with that said, good night, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks or possibly at the East Coast Large Scale Train Show if you venture out there. So good night.
We'll see you.